So now let's look at some common HTML elements. After this presentation, you'll be able to apply headings and sections within your web page. You'll be able to create different types of lists, and also you'll be able to write comments in your code. These are the different elements we're going to look at. So, quick reminder, what do we already know? Well, we've seen this web page and we've talked about this web page. So let's strengthen our understanding. In that web page we've already seen we had H1. So there's actually a range of those H1. There's H2, H3, H4, H5, H6, and each one gets smaller and smaller. So that H1 is the biggest one. So if you go back 20, 30 years, the idea of these H1, H2, H3 was a kind of title of a section. Okay, so that's why this one is bigger than this one, because it's the main part of a report, for example, and this could be a sub-part of a report. All right, so there's different visual size, and going back 30 years, they're supposed to have different meaning as well. Less important, less important, less important. I should say not less important, but subsection, sub-subsection, and so on. However, these days, people often cheat by using these elements, H1, H2, and so on, simply to get different size text. Now, that is not what you're supposed to do. That's not the correct way to use these elements. However, it is a quick and easy way to get something bigger and smaller. Now, that means that the original idea of these isn't being used correctly. So they added another element called section, which we'll talk about later. So, quick example, H1, H2, H3, and a paragraph underneath it. Nothing too complicated. What does it look like? Looks like this. H1, H2, H3, and paragraph. Okay, straightforward. And you can see H1 bigger than H2, bigger than H3, and so on. It works. It looks a bit boring, but it works. It's black and white. Those elements are shown using the default style of the browser. Now, later we'll talk about changing the style so things look more interesting. Let's have a quick look at that. So this is exactly the same HTML code. H1, H2, H3, and also a paragraph. It looks totally different. That is using a particular set of style rules, which is shared by this particular presentation. But it's still H1, H2, H3, and a paragraph. So we'll look at how to make web pages more visually exciting and interesting later by using style. So I mentioned before, H1, H2, H3, and so on. They're not really being used in the original way. So recently, HTML have added a section idea. So you just say, this is a section, and then inside the section you can put anything you like, but an obvious thing to do is to put a little title or subtitle, and then some paragraphs or something containing the text in that section. So that's the more common way to handle sections these days. This is what it looks like. In fact, the section command actually doesn't do anything visual, so it's really about structuring the HTML. So let's look at lists. It's another common thing that you often do in web pages. So there's two main tags, UL and LI, and later we'll look at OL. Okay, in this particular slide, UL, unordered list. So we do UL/UL. And then each individual item uses LI, list item. So my first item in the list, second item, third item, all of that goes in UL. What does it look like? It looks like this. First item, second item, third item. Very straightforward. By default, a circle is used on the left-hand side for an unordered list. What about the other type of list? OL. OL, ordered list. And the list items are exactly the same, no change. We just change the structure to an ordered list. And by default, it uses numbers. And so it will automatically increase the numbers, 4, 5, 6, 7, if you use an ordered list. Now, what other things can you do with lists? You could change the start number. Assuming you're using a number sequence, an ordered list, you can actually fix the start number. And then it will increase the number by 1 each time. So here I've said start with 1999. So it starts with 1999, and then each time it adds, just to make a series of years, just for a kind of funny example. So we can fix the start number, and also we can do other things, like we could reverse the list so that it goes backwards. So it's 2002, 2001, 2000, and it goes down. It begins counting down because I added the word reversed. So here it's counting down because of the word reversed. I also, for this particular example, I also swapped the order of those list items. So what else could you do? Well, maybe you don't want numbers, 1, 2, 3. Maybe you want letters. Maybe you want a capital letter, A, B, C, D. Also, not shown here, maybe you want small letter, small a. Okay, you replace capital A with small a. You'll get small a, small b, small c, and so on. So let's use big A, and the result is what you might expect, A, B, C, D, using capital letters. All right, so nothing too complicated, but they're very common HTML. So the last thing we're going to look at is comments. So comments are a little bit hard to type. Less than sign, exclamation mark, hyphen, hyphen. It's pretty horrible. Excuse me. And then we have a comment, and then hyphen, hyphen, greater than. So it's pretty horrible to type this stuff, but when you do it, you can put anything you like in the middle. So here, for example, this is a simple demonstration of using comments, and I can't believe this, and here's my simple list. And so we have 1, 2, 3, we have 4 comments in one single web page. Just useful to remind you some things, or you could change some HTML into a comment by adding this at the front and adding that at the end, and it converts some HTML into a comment, maybe temporarily, and it hides it from the browser. All right, so that's the end of our second discussion about HTML.